When my husband asked for a divorce, he did it the way he ordered coffee, calmly, precisely, already certain of the outcome. We were in the kitchen. The dishwasher hummed. He leaned against the counter, not looking at me directly, and said he thought we had grown in different directions. His voice carried that careful neutrality people use when they've practiced something in their heads. I remember nodding. Not because I agreed. Because I understood. 3 days earlier, my father had been buried. The house still smelled faintly of lilac from the service. Grief had already hollowed me out. When my husband said he wanted to leave, it felt less like a blow and more like confirmation of something that had been thinning for years. He explained logistics before I could speak. We would sell the house, split the joint account. He had already looked into an apartment downtown. He said it gently, as if offering me a ride somewhere inconvenient but necessary. I said very little. That evening, after he went to bed, my phone buzzed with an email from my father's attorney. The subject line was clinical. The contents were not. The estate had been finalized. My father, who had spent decades building a business I barely understood, had left me $72 million. I read the number 3 times, not because I doubted it, but because it meant nothing in that moment. I had just lost him. The money felt like an administrative echo. I closed the email and didn't wake my husband. It wasn't strategy at first, it was instinct. The information felt fragile, like something that needed to sit with me before it entered the world. The next morning, he spoke about timelines. We should keep this civil, he said. The simpler we make it, the better. He assumed I would struggle financially. He didn't say it outright, but it threaded through his suggestions how I might need to consider a smaller place, how he was willing to be fair about the car. For years, he had handled most of our investments. Not because I couldn't, but because he preferred to. He liked being the informed one. The steady one. I let him believe I was still that woman. In the days that followed, I visited the bank alone. I sat across from advisors who addressed me directly, who didn't glance around the room for a husband to confirm my decisions. I signed documents with a steady hand. I hired an attorney of my own quietly, professionally. The money began to feel less abstract. It wasn't about luxury. It was about insulation, about options. About never again feeling as though someone else's departure could destabilize my life. At home, he grew more procedural. He emailed me draft agreements. He asked for access to statements. He mentioned full financial disclosure as a routine part of divorce proceedings. Transparency makes everything smoother, he said one evening, standing in the doorway of the guest room where he had started sleeping. I nodded again. I did not mention the inheritance. Part of me wondered if withholding it made me dishonest. But another part understood something more uncomfortable. He had already made his decision about my value without knowing the full picture. If our marriage depended on my perceived scarcity, then its foundation had been compromised long before the paperwork. A week after the initial conversation, there was a knock at the door. Not his key in the lock. Not the casual entry I was used to. A knock. I opened it to find him standing straighter than usual, dressed in a navy blazer. Beside him was a man I recognized only from LinkedIn photos, his attorney. "Can we come in?" my husband asked. It wasn't a request, it was a formality. They sat at the dining table. The lawyer placed a leather folder between us and spoke in a tone so neutral it almost erased the human context. As part of the divorce process, we'll need a complete accounting of all assets and liabilities, including any recent changes in financial status. Recent changes. I felt my pulse in my throat, but my voice didn't betray it. I understand, I said. My husband watched me carefully. There was something new in his expression, not cruelty, not quite suspicion. Calculation. He had likely assumed I was financially dependent. That I would negotiate from a place of need. His sudden formality suggested he wanted to secure his position before anything unexpected surfaced. "I've retained counsel as well," I added. That made him blink. "I've already begun the disclosure process through my attorney. All required documentation will be provided through proper channels." The lawyer's pen paused slightly above his notepad. "Of course," he said. "That's appropriate." The air shifted. For the first time since he'd asked for the divorce, I wasn't responding to his structure. I was establishing my own. They left within 20 minutes. He didn't linger at the doorway. He didn't try to soften the moment with small talk. After it closed behind them, I stood in the quiet house and felt something unfamiliar. Not triumph. Clarity. He had come with a lawyer to assert control over a narrative he believed he understood. He expected transparency from a woman he had already categorized as dependent, manageable, predictable. He did not expect insulation. My attorney later advised me on the specifics. Inheritance, especially structured properly, often remained separate property. The details would matter, the timing would matter. But the foundation was solid. When formal disclosure eventually occurred through legal channels, not across a kitchen counter, the recalibration was unmistakable. His emails grew shorter, more cautious. There were no apologies, no dramatic reversals. Just a steady adjustment in tone, as if he were rewriting a script mid-performance. We finalized the divorce 3 months later. I kept the house. He kept his apartment downtown. The money remains largely untouched, invested conservatively. Sometimes I log into the account just to confirm it exists not as a trophy, but as evidence. What changed wasn't my lifestyle. It was my posture. For years, I had mistaken accommodation for harmony. Silence for peace. Now I understand that silence can also be a boundary. When he asked for a divorce, he believed he was stepping away from someone small enough to leave without consequence. I stayed quiet, and in that quiet, I discovered I had already inherited something far more stabilizing than $72 million. I had inherited the ability to stand alone without announcing it.